One of the facts of Jiu-Jitsu these days is that there's more information than ever before. There are more techniques, more people coming up with new moves. But the problem is this has developed what I call a breadth of technique, but not a depth of technique. And so what you're getting is a lot of people who know a lot of techniques, but not a lot of them well. Okay, I heard a quote from Carlos, I think it was Carlson Gracie, who told a person one time, you know 10,000 techniques and you suck at them all. And so what you get a lot of times these days is I think you get instructors saying, don't do this move because it doesn't work. And usually what that means is they can't do the move or they don't understand the move. And so they're telling people not to do it, okay? Pedro Villingen Jr., I heard once say, imagine the hubris to blame the technique and not the person. So recently I saw a video from a black belt and he was saying not to do this particular way to transition from side control to mount because you'll just get rolled over. And this is one of our fundamental ways to go from side control to mount. In fact, in my white to blue belt curriculum, you have two major ways and this is one of the two. And I was really surprised to see him say this because when I watched the video, when he was going from side control to mount, he was making basically every single mistake you could make going there. And so of course the technique didn't work. When I teach it, I've rarely had anybody ever reverse me on this move because I've spent a lot of time breaking it down and understanding how the person can counter it and what I can do to prevent that. And I'm really understanding the move instead of going, oh, well, I tried it, I got rolled over, so obviously this move doesn't work, I'm gonna learn something new. These are fundamental techniques, and yet a lot of people aren't learning the fundamentals that well because they want to jump past the boring fundamental stage, as one black belt put it, and jump straight to the advanced stage. Except the advanced techniques are built on the fundamental techniques, and so a lot of people don't learn them. Or they hear somebody say, don't do this move, it doesn't work, and they give you maybe one reason, but often that reason is because the person didn't really understand the technique. A friend of mine once said about Henry Akins and John Danaher that they blow so many black belts' minds because they're teaching stuff that those black belts or upper belts never learned. And yet when he watches the stuff, he says most of the stuff I ever see them do that blows people's minds is stuff that he and I learned in our first year of Jiu-Jitsu. It's just so many people skip that stage or they learn it very poorly and very briefly. And so of course it doesn't work and they abandon it. And then somebody comes along and explains, oh, this is actually how you're supposed to do it. And they say, oh my gosh, it blows my mind. And that reminds me of when I went to a school one time, and I've told this story before, but I went to a school one time and I was teaching. And I was having a class warm up with the basic armbar from mount. Somebody bench presses you, you spin, you sit back for the armbar. And everybody kept trying to go to this S mount first and then go to the armbar, which is a different version, right? It solves a different problem. It has its different pros and cons. So I stopped the class, I said, no, I just want the simple go. One move technique, not slide to S mount, hook the legs, very step around. That's a great technique, it's a different technique. And the coach comes up to me and he says, they don't know it because I've never taught it because it doesn't work. I said, okay. I said, I kind of pulled him aside, I said, can you show me? And he tries to do it, he falls over every time. And so what it told me was, he couldn't do the technique, and so he's saying the technique doesn't work, whereas he couldn't do it. And then he tells me, well, in rolling, nobody ever really pushes you up. And so later when I rolled with the students and with him, they all bench press me, I armbar them all with the move that doesn't work. And it's funny, afterwards I told him, I said, I thought you said it didn't work. And he said, well, yeah, but you were heavy and I had to push you. I was like, well, it doesn't matter. The point is, you did what you said no one will do, and I used a technique you said doesn't work. But he is training a group of people who are told by him, the authority, this move doesn't work. And so he's taking actually one of the techniques out of their arsenal. And that's the irony for me, is that there's more information now, but so many instructors will say, don't do this move, don't do that move, don't do this move, don't do that move. They don't work. And so, like over the years, I've heard so many things. Omoplata. I remember being told omoplatas don't work. They're dead. Don't ever use them anymore. This is maybe 12, 15 years ago. And now, omoplatas are very popular, right? I've heard stack passes don't work. I've heard guillotines don't work. I've heard, double legs don't work. I've heard any number of techniques that don't work, and authoritatively, and then people will say, oh, these techniques don't work. I don't need to explore them. I don't need to try them. And so their arsenals are getting smaller and smaller, right? One I hear all the time now is never pass from your knees, right? Well, you're going to pass one of two positions, standing or on your knees. Why would you tell a student to take away half of their potential arsenal? Because maybe you don't understand how to pass from the knees. Yes, there are dangers there, but there's dangerous standing, right? You have to weigh in the pros and cons. Which reminds me of another story, which I don't want to keep telling stories, but these are all to explain why I really don't like this mindset. Was I had some people visiting my school once, blue belts, and we went over the basic stack pass. Now, stack pass has been core to our team since I started. We drilled stack pass 2-3 times a week. And so all the guys from my early days had amazing stack passes. And then, of course, it died out. Nobody did it until Marilla Santana came along, and all of a sudden, stack passes work again, somehow miraculously. But anyway, so I taught these guys this, and they told us their coach said never do stack pass. It just doesn't work. And then I taught it. They said, "Oh, okay. Well, we've never seen it taught like this. We never understood. It was just their coach was basically saying, grab the leg, throw it to the side, and then you're gonna get triangle. The guy's gonna escape. He's gonna push. All this stuff." They had a very bad and fundamentally incorrect understanding of the technique. And like I said, it's a technique that that my coach spent, many training sessions on. So I really understood it. So the funny part, they wrote me later, they said we went back to our school and our coach was especially mad at us because not only were we doing the stack pass, we were passing brown belts with it. So, this technique he had told us doesn't work, and then we're doing it to some of the better guys in the school. So the point is, all these people that I hear say don't do X move, yes, it's if your coach, listen, but any coach who's telling you always do X, never do Y, I always take that with a grain of salt. That's something I try never to do. Every technique has its place. If I can't make it work, it doesn't mean somebody else can't make it work, or maybe it means I don't understand it well enough. Yes, there are bullshit techniques out there. I'm not saying grab some wazoo, Din Mott type technique and make it work, but if it's a fundamental technique that has worked for a long time, and somebody can't get it to work, what's more likely? It's like if I teach you a double leg, and this happens all the time. I see beginners learn double legs and they get guillotined. Well, then they go, well, the double leg doesn't really work in BJJ because you get guillotined. No, you have to adjust it, and your head placement is wrong, and your posture is wrong, right? It doesn't mean the double leg itself is not useless. So in closing, the technique that I'm discussing here that this instructor showed, I showed at the beginning of this video, and the first way is, kind of the way he did it and how he got rolled, and then the second way is just a brief demonstration, not going into the techniques or anything, of the more correct way to do it. I am finishing writing up. I know I've been saying this for a while, but I'm actually pretty much close to finish of writing up, and we'll be shooting soon my pressure and control instructional. And in that instructional, I will have transitions from positions, especially from side control to mount, and we will really break down deep into some of these ways to get from this position to this position without losing control or ending up having the person escape. But it'll be a very deep dive, and you'll see that, again, rather than say, okay, well, here's a move done kind of sloppy, and then I'll have to show you 10 other moves because this was kind of sloppy, so you got to jump from move to move to move. Last kind of story, I apologize. I tell a lot of stories because, again, it helps illustrate. I saw an instructional a while back, and it was how to escape when the person is going from side control to mount and you're on bottom, right? And it had like 15 different escapes. And yet every single escape was predicated on the person on top making a huge fundamental error. Something I drill into my white belts, never do this. Again, yeah, there are times to do it, but I'm saying, as a rule, I try to get them not to do this because it will make it difficult, makes it easy for the person to escape. There are times I'll do it if I'm attacking something different. But the point is, he was already set up to win because the person on top was doing a very poor job. So of course he could escape very easily. I'm sorry, I'm going to tell one more story because, and this isn't meant to brag or anything, it's just meant to explain that if you get each technique correct, you don't have to have an arsenal of 1,000 techniques that you're trying to remember. You can focus on just a few techniques and maximize their usage. If you have a weapons system, right, you want to have, you don't need a ton of weapons. You need a number of weapons that cover a number of problems and make sure that they are in top working condition and they're the best possible weapon you can get. To me, that's Jiu-Jitsu. So I had, when I was in England, I was teaching a seminar, and after class I was sitting around talking to one of the guys, and I showed him the way that I do one of the ways I do side control, and explaining kind of key concepts. It's not do it like this. It's here's what you're looking to stop, here's what you're looking to prevent, and here's how I solve that problem. And he told me later he went to a seminar, and it was with, I think, a red belt, he said. It was either a red belt or a coral belt. And the guy said, hey, he's going to show how to escape side control. He goes, okay, come over here, put me in side control, to the guy I had taught. The guy gets him in side control, and this person said to him, well, no, you're actually doing it correct, I can't escape, right? He said, do this is how most people will do it, and now I can escape. He said, the way you did it, it's actually correct. I can't escape that. And that's the point, right, is that most people will do it the way that's 60, 70% right. And so he could escape. But once you actually understood what you were doing and locked it in, it was much, much harder for the person to escape. So, invest your time in really understanding the problem. So many of the techniques people ask me, where did you come up with this? How did you figure all this out? And it's just, I take what I think are high percentage techniques or fundamental techniques that are worked across a spectrum of combat. Meaning, if I'm developing a technique to pass a lasso guard, that's only going to work within the sport BJJ context, right? It doesn't work in a military combatives context or law enforcement. It doesn't work in an MMA context. It doesn't work in a street context. You're just not going to have somebody doing that to you. So I'd rather focus on techniques that work across those four combative realities. And then I constantly ask myself, how can I refine this technique? How can I make it work better? How can I prevent his defenses, or at the very least, put myself in a position to counter or exploit his defenses? Rather than go, okay, this video on YouTube showed me how to do this, or my coach told me how to do this, and that's as far as my understanding of it goes. So that's kind of my thoughts about this. Obviously I put things on YouTube, but even my stuff, question it. I always say, learn the fundamentals as best you can, and then go back and question them constantly. But don't criticize, critique them. Don't say, oh, this is bullshit, or it doesn't work, because I, a blue belt, couldn't make it work. Go, okay, why am I having problems with this technique? What is it trying to accomplish, and how is it being shut down? Okay, how do I solve that problem? And I think your jiu-jitsu will get a lot easier and a lot more interesting and a lot more fun. All right, thanks guys.